Welcome to As I Live and Grieve, a podcast that tells the truth about how hard this is. We're glad you joined us today. We know how hard it is to lose someone you love and how well-intentioned friends and family try so hard to comfort us. We created this podcast to provide you with comfort, knowledge, and support. We are grief advocates, not professionals, not licensed therapists. We are you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back again today. Oh, dogs barking in the background. This is my normal household. As you know, I live with my daughter and her family, and they have 3 dogs. So there are 3 dogs barking in the background. I can mute my microphone in a minute because I'm going to introduce our guest and have her talk to you. Hi, Tina. Thanks for joining me today.
Kathy, I'm so thrilled to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself to our listeners. If you would just tell them a little bit about your background, your story, and let them know, who is Tina?
Well, as she said, my name is Tina Erwin, and I'm the author of 9 books on metaphysics. And I started writing these books after many years of observing how people respond to death, to grieving, to what happens, their curiosity about life after death. I spent 20 years in the Navy, and as a naval officer, you have to sit down with someone whose loved one has died and tell them that their loved one has passed away. And it's a hard thing to do. And at the same time, it's part of the normal passages that we experience, the normal experiences we have in life. People we love are going to leave us. And as a naval officer, I was required to be part of that process. And after I retired, I did work for the Red Cross for a little while, and oddly, my job was to explain to Marines that a loved one had died when a Red Cross notification had come in. I was at the Marine Corps recruiting depot in San Diego for a while. And then I left that and went on to do some other things, specifically writing. And then at one point in 2003, my 6-year-old niece sat on the sofa and she said, "Mommy, I feel hot." And she died right in front of my sister.
Oh, my goodness.
It was, my sister did, CPR mouth to mouth. She's giving her 6-year-old daughter mouth to mouth and watches her life pass before her. The 6-year-old niece's life passed before my sister's eyes. It was an astonishing experience. And then after that, it was a blur of police and fire and neighbors and notifications. And it was really amazing what happened. In the meantime, my sister called me because I have a pretty significant level of psychic ability. She said, "You have to remote view and tell Ariana to get back in her body." And she said, "No, Aunt Tina, I'm done. It's time for me to go." It was an astonishing moment for me. And she's standing there with her arm as a ghost child around her older sister. I could see all that.
I can't imagine.
And I had to call one of my brothers and tell him, and he says, "You have to cross that child over." Well, I'm going into somewhat of a convoluted conversation, but when someone you love dies, that part of you that has a high frequency drops. And that includes if you have psychic ability, you're in shock. When you're in shock, your frequency drops. I had a hard time remote viewing after that and crossing her over. So my brother had to help me. And it was a beautiful moment and a moment of tragedy because her grandfather was on one knee as she moved into the light because we helped her because children don't know what to do at death. So we brought in an angel. We crossed her over, and my brother-in-law's dad had died, and he got on one knee and he just swept her up in the biggest, most glorious hug. It's one of those memories I will never forget. And she's beaming and smiling at him, and he's smiling at her. That brought enormous comfort to my sister and my brother-in-law, who are just really wonderful people. And I've helped thousands of people to cross over. People who didn't know they were dead, who were astonished to find out that death had come. People who are extremely Christian, who studied the Bible all their life, but had no idea what to do when death came for them. They didn't know how to recognize it. People who were angry that they died. People who were grieving. I can't be dead. I got a phone call from one of my brothers who worked for a Screen Actors Guild for years, and he said, he was also very sensitive individual and very intuitive. And he said, one of our producers, who's a member of the guild, is a friend of ours. She was hit by a car on the side of the road, one of the freeways. And I can feel that she's still there. Can you cross her over? Through a process, I was able to do that. And I found her standing on the side of the road, and she's talking on her phone, she thinks she's talking on her phone, and she's screaming at the police officer. And the ambulance is there with no lights on, but she doesn't notice that. And she sees me and she says, well, I don't know who you are, and I'm remote viewing her because it's a long way. And she says, you have to understand, this police officer is so rude. Maybe you can help me. I need to get a hold of my husband and I need to call the studio. And I said, I need to tell you that your phone isn't working and that your accident caused your death. And I'm so sorry. And I brought this beautiful angel to stand by you and to help you into this beautiful light. And she says, oh no, I can't be dead. You have to understand. I have a nail appointment tomorrow. I have my daughter's birthday party's on Saturday. I have a meeting with Paramount next week. I'm getting a new film launch. I can't be dead.
Oh my.
And I said, I can understand you are such a busy person and you love your family and you love your work, but it is over now. I'm so sorry, but you have to go with this angel right now. You have to cross over. There is no tomorrow for you. It ended today. Then she went into a kind of shock and she crossed over and she didn't say another word. One night in the middle of the night, let me stop. Do you have any questions or should I just keep going?
Oh, keep going, but I have questions, but keep going. Don't stop now.
Okay. About, I don't know, was it middle of the night? I guess it was 11 o'clock. I got a phone call from my son and his wife, and they live a mile from us. And they had a new baby, a little boy, our grandson. And he says, Mom, the baby won't stop crying. He is just screaming and screaming and we've never heard him cry like this. It's not a cry we've ever heard before. Can you help us? So I said, sure. So it's nice to have your mom on speed dial so you can remote view. So I remote viewed, and there's about a 10-year-old little girl standing over him. It's like she's pinching him. And I said, hello, what are you doing to the baby? And she said, well, the baby can see me. So I pinch him so I can get a reaction because nobody listens to me and nobody will talk to me. And all my mom does is cry, and she cries and cries, and I don't know what to do. And I said, so how did you come to this house? She said, well, I follow a different child home every day from school. Oh, this is the first time that somebody in this house can see me. Okay. I said, well, sweetie, your mom is crying because you died. And she said, I don't know what that means. And I said, well, sweetie, tell me, what's the last thing you remember? She said, I was swinging. Oh, I was swinging so high. I loved it. And I said, and you let go? And she said, yes. And then I was standing next to Mommy and she was crying and I don't understand. So I brought in a child angel to take her by the hand and cross her over. And I said, this will help your mommy who has been crying. Mm-hmm. Because the little girl is still standing there so she can feel her daughter. Can't explain it to anybody.
So yeah, she can feel the energy, right?
She can feel the energy. So, and you see this with a person who's committed suicide. When someone's taken their life, they are immediately sorry, and then they start to grieve. So the grief for a family suffering with a suicide death is magnified because the grief of the person who died is all intermingled with your own grief. When you cross that person over into this forgiving, embracing light of God, what you end up with is the family who is grieving begins to feel better, but they don't understand why. We had one client who had 17 family members commit suicide. 17. 17. And every one of them was crossed over. It's like the sun came out in her life. She said, I had no idea. That's why she was having suicidal ideation. She was in resonance with all of those members who had taken their life. It's basic physics. when you're in resonance with something that's very traumatic and emotional, it changes your mindset. But by the compassionate act of crossing those people over, the sun came out. She got a relationship. Her business took off. She felt happy for the first time. So I'll stop now.
Oh my goodness. Oh, so many questions. Okay. So let me start first by, you mentioned that one of these, I don't know, what do I call them? Are they spirits? Are they ghosts? Are they?
The word ghosts, because I'm not a fan of the word spirit. A spirit can be a black magician, a lower realm intelligence, a ghost, or an angel. So I purposely am very specific. It's this being I'm referring to in this moment is a ghost.
Okay. You mentioned, especially with children, they don't know how to cross over. Okay. Well, I'm an adult of many years, many, many years. I'm a senior. I don't know how to cross over. How do you learn how to cross over?
Well, frankly, because of people like you in this podcast. I would say that other than the Tibetans, because a lot of the Tibetan philosophy so beautifully mirrors the teachings of Christ, kindness and compassion and loving one another, right? That they have a great understanding. I would also recommend the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. Is a great treatise on understanding what the process of death is, which I can explain, but what happens after death and a lot of the different elements of death. Death is a physical, chemical process, and the soul lives forever. Our bodies might become compost. And we know this because when we're speaking, we immediately separate body and soul. Well, you put the body in the ground, but I know his soul is with me. I know his body lives further. So we know this part is absolutely true because it's something that's a part of us. So when someone dies, they go through, we live in the third dimension, the physicality of time and space and gravity, which anchors us and gives us an opportunity to experience mortal life. Okay, these are basic physics concepts. When you die, the silver cord inside the heart is cut. You can't be revived. Then the soul exits the body with what are called Akashic records. They are the memories, right? Everyone you've ever met, every place you've ever been, everything you've ever touched throughout all time. Those you take with you at death. And you come back in with them in the next life, which is why many people remember a past life. So understanding the mechanical physics of dying and rebirth is really important. When you leave the body, it's like somebody turns the lights out. All the body systems begin to turn off. Then you move into what I refer to as the fourth dimension. And this is a place of no time, no space, and no gravity. And it's like a step up transformer. You can't go from the third to the heaven world. I call it the fifth dimension. You have to move up to that. It's like walking up steps. So you move into fourth. And for the most part, the light comes for most people. Most people see it not 100%. If you died through murder, horrible tragedy, suicide, a lot of times where you don't know you're dead. You don't see, it's like you can't see the light. And every person's death is as unique as their personality is. Right. We can't lump all the dead into one. They are just as unique in death as they were in life, which I think is important. As they move from the body, they move into the fourth dimension, and there's an adjustment. And then there's the light. And a lot of people just move right into that light. And the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore and Whoopi Goldberg was a pretty accurate representation. You still have free will in the fourth dimension. You can still make some decisions. He chose not to move into that light. Okay. I know a lot of psychics say, oh, well, so-and-so had unfinished business. Mostly they don't. They just don't know what to do. So they hang around because they don't know what to do. And I have 3 books out, Ghost Stories from the Ghost's Point of View, which gives you all, if you have all 3 volumes, there's 63 stories that explain what it's like for that person. And I'm going to give the endings away. They all move into the light, and it has a very it's such a glorious feeling. I mean, to be able to help another soul is everything. And that's why I wrote something called the crossing over prayer.
I saw that on your website.
And I also wrote something called the crossing over prayer book.
Oh.
And it's 88 prayers that help the living and the dead. If your child dies, there's a very poignant prayer to cross over your child.
Ooh.
If someone you love took their own life, there's the compassion prayer for suicide. There's prayers for someone who's going into a war zone, in addition to the crossing over prayer. And I even cross over murderers. There's a special prayer for if your loved one was murdered. There's a very special prayer for that event as well, because there's a unique form of healing. The violation of having been murdered is hard for us to fathom, but it happens to an astounding number of people, unfortunately.
Sure. Yeah.
And that prayer specifically offers special healing, just like the suicide prayer, special healing. But if you've never heard of it, you can look at my website, and I even have what are called crossing over prayer cards. Mm-hmm. And the prayer was written so that you shouldn't have to pay a medium to help your loved one. I feel that's inherently wrong. You should be able to cross over your loved one yourself.
Well, how do we know they need help?
They always need help.
They always need help.
And let me put it to you this way. If you say this prayer 3 times with a firm voice that is filled with love and compassion, you're not going to hurt anything. That person will be helped. If they've already crossed over, then there's no problem.
Okay.
Yes.
But it may help you, the griever, feeling that you have been a part of this process, right?
Yes.
That you have helped them achieve that. You hear so many things. The one thing that has always stuck in my mind was at one point somebody said to me, I asked, what's the difference between ghosts and spirits? And I know spirits is a word you don't like, but they said to me, a ghost is someone who has died but is having difficulty crossing over. And a spirit is someone who's been successful in crossing over. Now, that just for some reason stuck in the back of my head for years and years and years. But I had never had the opportunity until today, listening to you, to know that there's something that we can do to help in that process. And I can't help but think it would have made me feel so much better at the time, knowing that there was a process here. So I just wish somebody would get it together and let us know.
Well, I've crossed over ministers who were shocked at what happened at death. They warn you not to be sinful, but they don't tell you, you're a mortal person. You're going to make mistakes.
Well, sure.
You're here for the experience of it.
Yeah.
And after you die, you get to review what happened, but you don't get that review until you're in the heaven world. And once you're in the heaven world, it's a one-way door. You don't come back and forth.
Right.
Visit a loved one in the sleep state, but not often, because when someone is a ghost, they are impacting the living, and the ghost are earning karma. When someone is in the heaven world, they have the guidance of the higher realms. So they don't just willy-nilly come and visit you every night. Again, that soul is in the heaven world. A ghost has not crossed over. So I would politely disagree with the person who used the term spirit, because I have crossed over many a black magician who was doing horrendous things to people. And when your child dies, there's a desire to cling to that soul. Mm-hmm. However, if something happened to that soul, or let's say that they had a mental illness or something else had happened, the 23rd Psalm actually tells people what to do. Think about it. Lo, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that's the 4th dimension. I will fear no evil. There's some dark things in the 4th dimension. Some of them are scary, especially if you took your own life. Those dark beings on the movie Ghost, those are called lower realm intelligences. I've seen them for years, and I can remove them. So he was not whoever wrote that had a pretty good idea about how accurate that was. It was remarkably accurate. And when Patrick Swayze sees the light at the end, he says, you can't imagine the love. Wouldn't you want someone you loved to feel that?
Absolutely.
The 23rd Psalm goes on to say, he restoreth my soul.
Right.
You must make that transition into the light so that your soul can be restored. Many people, you have to ask yourself, where did these horrible serial killers come from? And these people with endless mental illnesses. And after talking to an uncountable number of dead, what I have learned is that each life, part of you is shaved off if you're not actively seeking to be a good person. And serial killers are born. They start with insects and animals at the age of 4. I mean, my mother was a psychiatric nurse, and she discussed every case that the psychiatrist she worked for had for 7 years. So understanding mental illness, it's not a mystery. These things happen to people. One of the reasons that electroshock treatment worked for many people was you knock the ghosts out of the body. An alcoholic can have up to 60 ghosts inhabit a physical body, or a drug addict. Those addictions, or gambling, anything that's a serious addiction, you're going to have a companion ghost. That's why all bars are haunted. They're all haunted. That's why if you're really psychic, you do not drink anything alcohol because you don't want that. You don't want to have that attraction. You want a very clean body because you're working in the service of humanity. You're helping the dead. I know I'm going on and on here, but these are such critical concepts.
You are. I'm fascinated. I am absolutely gobsmacked. I'm fascinated listening to you. And it just, for me, so many times when people start to talk about otherworldly things, my skepticism kicks in because I have a basis in science. But you're connecting the dots for me.
Oh, yes.
You're connecting the dots that I've been missing. And that's why I'm fascinated, because so many things now make sense. So how long can someone stay in the fourth dimension?
I don't know, 400 or 500 years.
I mean, especially, say they die as an infant. Here's the situation. Back in the mid-70s, I was pregnant and gave birth to a son, full term. I'd had no problems during pregnancy. In the hospital, I acquired an infection. I think it happened probably as they ruptured my membrane or something. I acquired an infection, and within an hour and a half, they had to do a forceps delivery on the baby boy. And at first, they told me that the baby was stillborn. Then they came back and said, the baby's alive. We resuscitated the baby, but he's not doing well. So we're going to transfer him to another facility that has a NICU that can take care of him. I never saw that baby, never touched him. And that was in the era where there were no photographs taken that early after a birth. We didn't have smartphones or anything. So for years, and society then was, death in your family, suck it up.
So he died in the NICU?
Yeah, he died in the NICU within 24 hours. He was transferred to the NICU and died not quite 24 hours later. How does an infant like that cross over?
They don't. You say the crossing over prayer for that baby. Because I've seen situations like this, whether it's a twin or a stillborn, and they stay with the mother or they stay with the next sibling who's born. The next sibling who's born doesn't feel like they're alone in their body. And they can't explain it to anybody. They feel like somebody's with them all the time, and then people think they're paranoid. They're not paranoid. That soul didn't cross over. They're confused. They don't know what to do. It's not a bad or terrible thing. It's physics. If you're an infant, you don't know. People say, oh, they just went back to heaven. I would love to think that, but unfortunately, I've just crossed over too many babies.
I have some work to do then.
Well, yes.
And is it likely that doing that, helping this infant cross over, will help me too?
Absolutely. I had a friend who, she had a stillborn twin. She had twin girls. Mm-hmm. And the twin was stillborn. And in a private moment, because I have private clients, she said, I know this child's still with me. It's like I can feel her. Well, I said, I can cross this child over, but it's going to be a lot more effective if you do it. And you need to ask your daughter if she feels the same thing. Her daughter says, oh, I've always known my twin is with me. She's always,
oh my goodness.
And I said, well, then make it a beautiful ceremony where you honor this child. Yeah. Give the child a name if you didn't name it.
Oh my goodness.
Say the crossing over prayer by some body of water. Could be a lake. It could be a little stream. Bring flowers. Say the prayer at least 3 times. Tell this child you're so sorry that you didn't have a life together, but you know in another time and place you will meet. And pour your heart and your love out to this child. Don't hold back. It's going to give you the greatest moment of emotional freedom, and you will feel a shift and something changes. It's not quantifiable, but I've done it. I've had people do this, and I want them to do it themselves. It's it's intimate. It's personal.
I feel like I have light bulbs going on in my head. So I think I'm gonna say pause our conversation there, because I am absolutely going to have you back for another episode. At least one more episode. I suspect there may be regular ones coming up, if that's all right with you.
I would be delighted. I would be honored to be on your show.
Perfect. But I'm going to stop there, because if I go on much more, I'm probably going to lose control of my emotions.
Okay.
I don't want to do that. And we're also about the time that I would normally wind down anyway. So that worked out well. I'll use that as my excuse, my rationale. So this is the time in the podcast, Tina, where I turn the microphone over to my guests. I want you to tell our listeners, and we have international listeners. They're around the world. So I want you to let them know, again, about your books, where they can get them, about your website, about what services you might offer them, or how they might get their own questions answered. So it's your turn. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Kathy. Amazon has all my books, and if you don't want to have to search Amazon, ghosthelpers.com is my website. Ghosthelpers.com has all 9 books. Also on that website, there is the Crossing Over Prayer. It's visible. You can read it from the website. There are videos of me reading the Crossing Over Prayer for you. Suppose you're choked up and you can't read it. Then just play those videos 3 times. There's another video on there that talks about what happens when you die. It's a complete step-by-step understanding. In addition to the many, many dozens and hundreds, actually, several hundred podcasts that I've done, many of them are on that website. And Ghost Helpers has a services page that talks about the things that I am able to do that help people. But among the biggest ones is understanding that when you cross someone over and they feel the embrace of the light of God, when they feel the embrace of Christ or Buddha or any of the great ones, the joy, the power of that love is the compassion every single one of us will want for ourselves. It is one of the greatest gifts, the greatest services you can do for a person who has died. And if they already crossed over and they felt that light, you're saying those prayers for them. They will still feel your love in the higher realms in the heaven world. And I encourage anyone who even thinks they have a ghost to say the Crossing Over Prayer. It's very simple. It's very beautiful. And you don't need a medium to do it. You can do this yourself. And I guess that would be the most powerful thing I could say. I want to thank you for having me on your show, and I would be dearly delighted to come back and talk again. Thank you, Kathy.
Well, we will definitely make that happen. Like I say, at least one more time. To our listeners, many of you listeners have been listening to me week after week, here and there, with different episodes. Heaven knows there's over 200 episodes out there for this podcast. So if you know me at all, or if you're someone who happens to know me personally, please know that right now I am touched to the core with what I've heard today, what I've learned from Tina. And sometimes I feel when I'm grieving, and as you all know, I've had 4 major losses in my life: my mom, my dad, my infant son, Lee, and my husband, Tom. Sometimes there are days that grief is just really, really hard. So I'm going to, for each of the major people that I have lost, I am going to say this Crossing Over Prayer for each one. I don't know for sure. I suspect that Lee is still around, because as an infant, how would he know? And who else would have known enough to help him? But anyway, I'm going to do it. So check in with me later, listeners, because maybe I'll tell you what happened. Maybe I'll tell you how it felt. Or maybe weeks from now, episodes from now, you will hear a difference in me. Enough said. Please visit Tina's website. Please explore her videos. I'm going to also check out the one about what happens when you die. I've asked that question so many times and gotten as many different answers, but I have an idea. Tina's going to unlock this mystery for me. So I'm going to check it out. I invite you listeners to join me in that endeavor. And then please come back again next time as we all continue to live and grieve. Thank you so much, Tina, from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. Do you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, or do you have a question from one of our episodes? Please email us at info@asiliveandgrieve.com and let us know. We hope you will find a moment to leave a review, send an email, and share with others. Join us next time as we continue to live and grieve together.